What's your decision you made on an instinct that ended up changing everything, and what did you learn from it?
My God.
Hello and welcome to Unplanned Life Season 2 with me, Ambika Singh Kama. Ms. Neerja Birla, thank you so much for joining us. So how unplanned or planned is your life?
My life has been quite unplanned. A lot of it has been organic, but I never viewed it as being unplanned.
When you've spoken of the values in the Gita, so how have those principles, whether it's of freedom, discipline, shaped your approach to leadership?
I do believe that, happiness and sorrow are two sides of the same coin. It's just an emotion that you feel, and neither of them is going to be long-lasting.
Hello and welcome to Unplanned Life Season 2 with me, Ambika Singh Kama. Now today our guest is someone who has had her shared moments of unplanned life. So let me introduce, we have with us Ms. Neerja Birla. Thank you so much for joining us today.
An absolute pleasure.
I think before we jump into this conversation, which I'm really looking forward to, first thing I want to ask you, you have studied psychology, Neerja, but initially you didn't plan to become a mental health advocate. So how unplanned or planned is your life?
Actually, when I was first approached and I read the word unplanned, that's when it really struck me that actually, yes, my life has been quite unplanned. A lot of it has been organic, but I never viewed it as being unplanned.
Yeah.
So that does add a little bit of excitement also to think that it was unplanned, but, things do fall into place because I do believe that, there is a higher force. And I believe in God. I'm God-loving.
Yeah.
So I do believe that there is a higher force that kind of is watching out for you. And a lot of times, unplanned things happen and you get sort of thrown off.
Yeah.
But then when you look back, you realize, there was a good reason for it to happen. So yes, unplanned, but, also falling into place as
For the better.
the better. And the pieces of the jigsaw just keep falling in.
I absolutely agree. When you say that sometimes we think, why isn't it going our way? Why me? And then you realize there was a reason why that didn't work out.
Yeah.
Neerja, while you come from a prominent family and then you later got married into the Birla legacy, if I can ask you your personal journey, obviously you've had your unexpected realizations, growth as well. Did you at any point feel, you felt your life is pivoting, or did you feel that, this is really the moment which was unplanned for me?
No, actually, pretty much everything. So even the last question that you asked me about psychology. So yes, when I was in college, I did want to do psychology. I started with it. But, I was married very young.
Yeah.
We got married very young, and I actually had to drop out at that time, which was very hurtful. I really regretted it. But at that time, that in itself was a change in plan. And I sort of then, went along with KM, and he did his MBA. So I was with him, thinking that I will come back and get back into education myself. But it didn't happen at that point in time, and
kids
happened and all of that. And then I took to psychology. I completed my degree much later on. It took a while to do it because, like I said, there were always unplanned things happening. But I was able to do it. So, and then, of course, side by side, I launched Empower.
Yeah.
And it's just fell into place. So when I was doing psychology, I didn't ever think of it.
That you're going to be be an advocate for mental health. In fact, I'm going to come back to, ask you what inspired. But just because you said that, I think it'll be nice to share with the viewers. For a lot of women, when you get married, your life does take, I wouldn't say like it falls back, but you do step down a bit. So because I got married early, I was a sports journalist, and then I got married, had kids. But then, like it says, I had the time, the kids grew up, and then you're back in your profession. So I think very similar, like you rightly said, you did your degree, but much later.
Yeah.
Okay, so what really inspired you to, when you found Empower, what was the real inspiration behind it, and why do you think there is a need? I mean, we know there is a need. We know how critical the situation is, whether we look at suicides, whether it's amongst the youth. I mean, everywhere we see the stress, the anxiety. But what really inspired you? Let's start with that.
So actually, there were two things. The first thing was, of course, my older daughter was going through her share of a mental illness. And at that time, I was totally at sea. Honestly, it hit me at that time that how unaware I was and how uneducated I was. So it was very tough to navigate that journey of trying to find the right people, the right resources, whom to go to. And more than anything else, the stigma was a lot. So one couldn't even talk about it to anybody. There was a lot of resistance from all sides. And I thought that, after being privileged, and yet if you're sort of grappling and not knowing what to do for your child, it can be a very isolating experience. And,
So it was more your personal,
It
like
was
your
personal,
own personal struggle where you realize that more should be done on this?
of course, absolutely. And one also realized that there was just so much that needed to be done. And then it also took me back, coincidentally again, to my own tryst with postpartum, which again at that time, I didn't know what had hit me.
And why are you always having those mood swings?
Exactly.
Yeah, depressed. Yeah.
Exactly. And, and then when I sort of came, when I launched Empower, and then I realized that, yes, it again sort of connected the dots, because I realized that had I known about postpartum back then, I would have been able to sort of navigate it much easier. Everyone around would have understood it better.
And at least we're talking about it today. I mean, at that time, I think nobody even spoke about it. Even today, I mean, we're talking about it at a certain level, but a lot of India, unfortunately, still doesn't know what they're going through after they deliver a
But
baby.
even at our level, a lot of times people still don't talk about it.
You're right.
Now, for example, people don't talk about perimenopause. It's such a huge stigma.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
but I see people talking at least a little bit about it. I think when our parents were, my mom was going through it. My sisters are much older than me, but today we're talking about it. But you're right, it's still very hush hush. Yeah.
I think I'm one of the very few in my own friends who talks about it. And
I'm so glad you brought it up, because I did a show last year on menopause, and really, because I used to do menstruation, I've done a lot on it. So everybody is why menopause? I said because that is the need of the hour. It's as important as menopause, but unfortunately we don't talk about it.
Absolutely not. So in fact, I'm beginning to believe now. So we've also been working in the space of mental health now for almost 10 years, and I'm now seeing that conversation is coming to middle stage. We've been able to shift the needle. People are talking about it. But perimenopause is not spoken about at all. So I think it's far more stigmatized now than what even mental health is. At least now we're talking about mental health. But I don't think anybody really talks about mental health.
Nisha, you said 10 years. You said you've been working, and we know the kind of work which Empower, I've been following it. I've interviewed earlier as well, is doing on ground. If I can ask you, over the years, as of now, what do you think the current situation of mental health is in India? And when you say support, what kind of support do we really have for the people who are going through it? Like you yourself said at that point, you didn't know what to do. Years down the line, 10 years you've been working. What is the situation now?
So I think definitely there is a change, because the narrative has changed. So it's not looked down upon the way it was back then. One has far more access to mental health care. There are many more, psychiatrists and therapists. And people are talking about it openly. So it's definitely far more easier to access than what it was for certain. And I think it's families also now, people are more aware, people are open, people are willingly asking for help.
Yeah.
It's
so accepting first and then asking as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think,
absolutely. Or both together. I mean, earlier because of the stigma, people would not even ask for help. But now it's not seen as a weakness to ask for help.
And now I think we're talking it more like it is okay not to be okay. I think that's another thing which has come up.
Yes.
Okay, just moving on to education again. You're doing so much in that space as a chairperson of the Aditya Birla Education Trust. Again, this is something very close to my heart, and I see you working in that space as well. Inclusion. So you're working with children with disabilities as well. So tell us what again motivated you, to make sure that it's inclusive and also a nurturing environment for the kids.
Yeah. So when my older two were much younger, I realized with them that when they would go to school in their classrooms, some of their peers were pulled out of class, because of a learning disability, which again was not really spoken about at all. It's just that they needed extra care and extra attention. So they were pulled out of class. And I thought that was a huge stigma, because those children used to feel bad about it, and it was really spoken about not in a very positive manner. And I realized that there was just no inclusion at all. And also the fact that everyone is not the same, right? I mean, you're expecting a square peg to fit into a round hole.
Yeah.
I mean, why is everything normal and abnormal? I mean, what is normal, right? At the end
just the lens or the perspective. Yeah.
And what do you call normal? What is a norm? So I think one has seen that. And I think that was very important to kind of give that nurturing environment. And also, we also know, right, that I think if we give children a nurturing environment, they are going to be far better products.
No, absolutely.
You're also then making them best versions of themselves.
And when you say learning, you're absolutely like, whether it's ADHD, there's so many learning disabilities today which people are talking about. Again, way back then, we didn't know about it, but then at least the awareness is there. So do you feel even the stigma here is reduced a lot when it comes to disability?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, the stigma over there is really reduced a lot. And I think more and more schools are open to it. I think there is a lot of inclusion happening in mainstream schools now. And I don't think that it is seen as something, that one needs to not talk about.
Yeah.
People are far more open about it now.
So it's good to hear that the stigma is reduced. We're talking about it. But again, I want to talk to you about as a woman, right? As a mother again. I think as women, we're always struggling to be perfect. And, we have so many things to do, whether it's as a wife, a daughter, daughter-in-law, mother, so many roles. I was reading and I've seen how well you do that balancing act really well. So tell me about it. How do you juggle and how do you wear these hats all really well?
No, first, let me just put out there, I don't do the balancing act well at all. I think it's a daily struggle, honestly.
So it is a struggle. So it's not just me.
Of course, it's a struggle with everybody. Like you're saying, we are so multiple roles, multiple things.
Multiple role and multitasking.
All the time. And I think with age, I can't multitask as well as I used to before. I just can't do it. It is what it is. So it is definitely difficult. And I think, I've also come to realize that balance is a very utopian concept. And what do you call balance? I mean, some people would think that getting 8-8-8 is going to be perfect, but it's not possible to get 8-8-8. I mean, you can't do 8 hours sleep, 8 hours work, 8 hours.
And it's a lot of pressure as well, somewhere or another. Yeah.
I think this concept, yes, I mean, having a balance in life, as in you sort of need to fill all the buckets in life, whether it is your social, your emotional, your mental, your spiritual, physical, all your buckets need to be filled.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily to do it on a daily basis, right? You got to.
So when you say you struggle,
and you also, I think that life is about trade-offs.
Yeah.
If I'm here, I'm having to trade off something else.
Absolutely.
Right? And if I'm somewhere else, I'm having to trade off something here.
Yeah.
So I think every day is a trade-off. And I think every day I'm just trying to see what is the trade-off I want to make on that particular day. And therefore, I need to work, I need to have that flexibility in my own mind also, because things do come up unplanned very often and almost every day for me.
Yeah.
And I just have to have that leeway in my own mind to do it. Otherwise, it just completely throws you off.
So obviously, again, prioritizing is something, as well, I would say mothers or caregivers, we have to do.
Absolutely.
But how do you switch off, or what is your go-to where you kind of chill, or, you say, okay, this is my self-care moment, this is my me time. So what is your favorite way to kind of switch off?
So I think, switching off, I don't know whether switching off is possible, but yes, I like to, when I'm doing something, then I like to be in that sort of space. So for me also, working out is a great way to sort of, I think, unwind. It may not be the right word, but just to get my energy back. I think exercising,
it does take up
energy.
Yeah. That link, I think I see now as we age, I see that more. Like earlier it was okay pushing ourselves, but now the more you work out, I feel you definitely have more energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the days I don't work out, I'm very happy.
Yeah.
And I'm, my mood is definitely, on the lower side. So I need my bout of exercise certainly to energize. I love spending time with the kids. So that's my time when I really, again, relax and we often play some games. I've just learned Mahjong, so we play that.
Nice. Okay.
Yesterday I was watching a movie with Ananya. I go shopping with my youngest. She's in London, so I'm with her a lot. Land up playing something or the other with my son, or if he's chilling with his friends, I often land up chilling with them. So I think, I think my world revolves around my children to a very, very large extent.
Yeah, which is why I said you balance it, because you're doing so much work for the society as well. I mean, in every way, right? And when you said that you go shopping, so I was thinking, so I have 2 boys, right? So I was thinking with the boys, I always land up playing pickleball or trying to keep up to that pace, but the shopping hasn't, right now, I think, set in. But, Neerja, again, I was reading that you've spoken about the powerful influence of your grandparents and, how it's had on your life. Especially, I'm reading this because when you've spoken of the values in the Gita. So I was reading something very beautiful you've written. So how have those principles, whether it's of freedom, discipline, shaped your approach to leadership or just to yourself as a person or what you are today?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things, my learnings from the Gita has been about trying to be equanimous in every situation. So I think I do believe that, happiness and sorrow are 2 sides of the same coin. It's just an emotion that you feel. And neither of them is going to be long lasting. Neither is happiness going to be there with you forever, and neither is sorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very transient emotion. It just comes and it goes.
Like they always also say, right, winter will always turn into spring.
Exactly.
Similar, like ups and downs.
Yeah. So I think seasons, for example, really fascinate me. I think the whole journey of the tree really fascinates me. It just amazes me, how it just sort of, the leaves just fall during fall, and it's just so abundant during spring. So I think that transience of life is something that I really hold on to, because that really helps you put a lot of things in perspective, and also helps you realize that nothing is here to stay. So you just enjoy it for that moment. Don't get too attached to it. And it also makes me realize that I'm not saying that I don't want to enjoy worldly pleasures.
Of course, it's a part of life. But
It's a part of life. But you don't need to get attached to it. You don't want to derive your happiness from it, because then if it's not there,
then you're left. Yeah, and you're going to get left hanging. Actually, that's really well said. Okay, moving on to another very critical part. And again, I believe that you, again, have a very strong opinion and you work towards this is gender equality. Coming to, again, from the women perspective, it's still a gap in our country. So when we talk about the workforce, what is your take on how can we really bring about, I mean, how do we really kind of break that when we talk about gender stereotypes, gender equality?
So, honestly, I think it's something that one struggles with regularly. And I don't think that we have come anywhere close to being equitable or gender equality or any sort of equity in that. I think we're far
so long
society. We're very patriarchal, and I think that patriarchy exists in every household. I mean, I'm taking the liberty to say every household. I mean, I haven't done a survey, but by and large,
mostly,
it's there pretty much everywhere. And I don't think any of us are fortunate to say that I don't have patriarchy in my household or
in and around me.
So I think it definitely is a very long journey, and I do believe that I think the way we bring up our sons and daughters is what is going to make a difference.
Because what they see us do as daughters see, or as they see how the sons are treating.
I may not have that in my generation, for example, but I can most certainly try and ensure that I bring up my children in a manner so that when their partners come in and when they are with each other, they don't see it like that.
Yeah. And I think it's even more important for sons. I mean, Nija, I know, of course, daughters, because we're making girls so strong and independent. But I think that shift really needs to happen with the boys. And I tell my sons as well, of course, they're 18 and 14, they're still young, but I tell them that you need to respect to a different level. It's not just, in every sphere of life. And what you said, it's so important for the life partner to understand each other.
I just feel that it's also a very long journey, because like in our generation, for example, because it doesn't exist so much, the kids are yet seeing it. So I may be telling them one thing, but if they don't see it happening, they may not be able to imbibe it, because eventually
I do what you see, I feel.
Do what you see. So I think that's where the tussle happens also.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, when you talk about your relationship with the children, and since we are talking about children, you use a very unusual term which is called caretaker. Why? I mean, and it is really unusual. I've never heard of that. Why?
I believe that, of course, there are times when you're bringing up your kids, you do want everything to be in your control.
Yeah.
But one realizes that, one realizes that that's not really the case. I mean, you have to nurture them to make them the best versions of themselves. You may want them to be the way you want them to be, but that's not going to happen. And there was a very nice, I think it was by Gibran, if I'm not mistaken. And he talks about, how you're like the potter. And it's this image that, that always stayed with me. You're like a potter, and your child is like a clay of mold, like a mold, like a pot of clay.
Yeah.
And you got to just mold the child.
Yeah.
But you're ultimately just a caretaker. You can't.
Once it's molded, yeah. That's true. And as they grow older, I think it just is. I won't say it gets tougher, but then you realize they're becoming what their personality is. They're growing, and then it's not in their control.
No, but it definitely gets tougher. I think as you become an older parent, your role obviously changes.
Challenges should become more.
Yes, challenges become more, and I also feel that you have to let go.
Yeah,
right?
Which is tough.
Which is very tough.
Because I've just left my son in college, and I'm like kind of messaging my husband's like, you can't like tell him to call you every day. You have to let go, and I'm like, okay,
It's very tough.
So it's very tough.
It's really very tough. And then it's really funny. It's really ironical because you're bringing up your children to become independent.
Yeah.
And when they really become independent,
You're like, why?
and then you're wanting to hold.
The irony of life, right?
Yeah. It always reminds me of this. Like when the sand just slips through the fingers, you're wanting to hold on
tighter, but it does slip out. Yeah. Again, as a mom, again, that's a question specifically because I'm asking you really from the heart as a mother, and maybe, the kids similar age, I would say, because your daughter's still in college, the younger one, right? But specifically, I ask you about Ananya. As a mother, how did you react when she chose an unconventional career path, right? I mean, she left Oxford. I mean, Oxford is just not anything she left for a music career, but today she's doing so well.
Yeah. So honestly, actually, it was not the music career that was bothering me at all, because I do believe that, I always wanted the children to pursue what they believed in and what they excelled in. As long as they're excelling in it and giving it their best, then I always say that you do your best and you leave the rest. So if they're giving in their best, then that was good enough for me. But yes, leaving education, it was not so much about just Oxford, but at that point in time to, not complete that, that was a little difficult for me. Yes, I have to sort of obviously.
And did you think that even I had left it, of course you left it for marriage, but she's leaving it for a career. Did you somewhere feel, because you had that regret that she shouldn't leave? Yeah,
that was a huge regret actually. That was
bothering you.
That really bothered me, because I knew it was really bothering me, and I knew that it would be important to complete it, and I understand the importance of that also.
Yeah.
And therefore also I was keen that she does it, and I used to tell her that very often, that
don't make
the same mistake, or you may regret it later.
Yeah.
I mean, we all make mistakes, and it's not that the children can't make the mistakes I have made.
And we only learn from our mistakes, right? Yeah.
And they have their own journeys to charter, and they will do it. And it's important to let go, to let them make the mistakes, because only then they're going to learn. But obviously, it was there in my mind that I don't want her to regret it later.
Yeah.
And she doesn't regret it, which I'm very happy
And she's
about.
doing so well.
So
proud mom, for sure.
Of course. And I was always very happy with her music. I mean, I really, really wanted her to do her music, because that is what gives her joy. And in fact, in the middle, when she decided to drop it, that really upset me. I mean, I felt that, she should not be dropping it, because she's so good at it. And she's so talented.
So, but today she's doing well. I mean, that's what, and I think what you rightly said, as a parent, you want your children just to be happy. That's the most important, of course, whatever they're doing in life. And coming to Advesha, she's also doing something very different. I would say she's doing a lot of work on menstrual health, something very close to my heart, like we spoke earlier as well, with Jas, right? So tell me a little bit about it. Again, something very unconventional. She's enjoying what she's doing. And it's not that she's just doing the tick mark for doing it, because I've spoken to her. She's quite invested in the cause.
Yeah. So she also started when she was very young. She was 17. And she wanted to just work in a space where she would be able to make a difference, which again was a stigmatized area. She picked up menstrual health. I think growing up, not at our house at all, but I think around, she saw the stigma. She realized that even her own friends had so much to deal with. And because she never had to deal with it at home, we're very open about it. She never realized that things like that still exist. And so when she saw it, it was quite an eye-opener for her. So
it is need of the hour to, I think, still break that stigma. So what you're saying, I did a lot of documentaries on this, and I've been to the interiors of our country where women, unfortunately, still don't have access to menstrual hygiene products. They were using like dried leaves and sand. And so then we talk about infections, and we talk about UTI, and we talk about, but it is still a huge challenge in our country.
Yeah.
Which I think
it was.
So how involved are you in that? Are you supporting her, or are you also, because it is a taboo still, like you rightly said. So how involved are you as a mother?
So as a mother, I'm really involved, because I know exactly what she's doing, and I know what Jas is doing. But I do want her to sort of, traverse that journey herself.
Yeah.
She's right now studying. She's doing her master's in LBS. Before that, she was doing her psychology and education at UCL. So she's involved. I mean, she's in touch with her team.
Yeah.
Of course, once she's back, she's going to, take.
So it's a passion project, and then
passion project for her. And once she's back, she will take it up in full steam.
Like you said, like Advesha never had to go through, like things are open in the family. we are all, I think, privileged. I would say we have so much gratitude for what we all have in our life. But again, coming to the larger society, when we talk about suicide deaths, especially among the youth, Neerja, that is a huge critical issue in our country. If I can ask you, your recent research has also highlighted the rising mental health challenges among youth. So what do you suggest? What systematic changes should be done to bring about a change? Because recently, I mean, you keep hearing time and again, the child didn't want to pursue this or failed an exam, something or the other. And is suicide really the easiest way, and why is this happening? Very unfortunate.
It's extremely unfortunate. And I think it's multifactorial. I mean, a lot of times people, I mean, you can't just point it to one sort of reason and say this is the reason. It is multifactorial. There is a lot of pressure. Our kids are growing up in an era which is very different from when we grew up. So the tools and the skill sets needed are also very different. And I think as parents, there's a lot of education that needs to happen. The youth are very aware. And as parents, we need to let them voice their emotions also.
Yeah.
In a proper manner. I mean, there are proper channels. There's a way to do it. And I think we just need to sort of guide them in that direction.
Or bridge the gap somewhere, and
bridge the gap,
take a step forward, and
absolutely. So what you call a generation gap, that does exist. And I think if we're able to, as parents, also increase our own literacy, and help and guide the children in a particular way, and I think that will really help. And again, I really believe that changing the narrative towards mental health is very important.
Yeah.
Creating that awareness.
But I'm so glad we're talking about it, and people like yourself, doing so much work on ground, because it really is the need of the hour. I'm going to get out my specs, like you said, with age, multitasking. So for me, it's my eyes. I struggle a bit. So we have this ethics exam, which is part of the podcast. So just some questions to just see how it works for you. So Neerja, you offered a significant grant for your organization, but the donor has conditions that compromise your mission. What do you do?
No way.
So clear cut on that?
Clear cut on that. I mean, absolute. I mean, it could be a very tempting offer, but if we don't align, then no.
So if the mission isn't complete, so you wouldn't go forward. Okay. Now, our team members struggling with personal issues affecting their work, how do you balance empathy, but also you have to keep in mind the organizational experience?
Yeah, that's a tough one, honestly, because we're also a mental health organization, right? So very often that does happen because, and all of us go with with all of us, there are unplanned things that happen, and you're landed up in situations where you're having to deal with the mental health concern. So yes, from the organization's point of view, it's very important, but I think empathy would come first. I would want to understand what is happening with him or her.
Why?
And if I'm not able to understand, then I would definitely want the team to understand. I mean, that I would want the person to be wholly supported. And obviously, the organizational goals would not suffer. So then, for that time, it can be handed over to somebody else who can pitch in and
to make sure that the person okay, great. That's a great answer. I think really well said. Okay, you are asked to partner with an organization with questionable ethics. So how would you decide, and what would you do?
I would not go ahead with it.
So even if there's a questionable
yes, I mean, I will definitely do my due. So if it's questionable, I will first do my due diligence.
Fair enough. And then,
and if it's a question mark, then I'll err on the side of caution.
Great. Okay. So since we don't know much about Neerja Birla, so I'm going to do a fun rapid fire, though we don't have a hamper. So Neerja, this is the best part of Plan Live. It's a rapid fire, and I think our viewers would love to know more about you. So it's a fun rapid fire, but without the hamper. Okay. So how do you prioritize your own mental well-being while advocating for others, and what self-care practices do you follow? Your tips.
So firstly, honestly, self-care is something that is just coming into my diary as well. But I don't want to call it self-care, but I would want to say that exercise is something that really energizes me.
So exercise is your go-to.
Yes.
Okay. And if I can add on to that, is it yoga, Pilates, run, gym?
So it's a combination of Pilates, bar, gym, cycling.
So everything.
Yeah, it's a mix. I get bored quite easily. So I need to have a little variety in my workout.
It's a good mix of cardio, strengthening, core, everything. Yeah. And what you all call, I think, paddle in Mumbai, we call that pickleball.
No. Paddle and pickle are two separate.
They're separate, but we don't have that here. I think you all have it. We don't have paddle
and pickle.
You have pickle there? Okay, so you're a paddle person.
I play both, but I'm a paddle person. Yes.
Okay. So Neerja, what's your decision you made on an instinct that ended up changing everything, and what did you learn from it?
My God. You stumped me on that one. Just repeat the question.
Okay, so the question is, what's a decision you made on instinct that ended up changing everything? And what did you learn from it? So what was that one decision which...
Actually, there have been so many like that. It's so difficult to pinpoint one. Maybe the decision to start looking after the school, which was then called New Era, and I was not keen at all on it. I was not ready for it. But then I decided to do it, and I guess that's how everything changed. It was literally I just intuitively then just went for it.
And you're happy with that intuitive decision.
I'm very happy.
An advice you would give your younger self, and how do you think that would have impacted your journey?
So firstly, I believe that retrospection is not the best tool, because I do feel that, in hindsight, everything can be different. But at that point in time, you're taking decisions which you think are best for that time. But having said that, I think I would tell my younger self to be, unapologetic and to own the way she is or the way she was.
Okay.
And to just have more faith in herself.
I think that's the most important one, right? Believing in oneself. Okay, so these may sound cliche, but I think people would want to know your favorite cuisine.
Mediterranean, Japanese, Lebanese, I said, Mexican.
Okay.
Italian. Yes, I think my go-to is Italian.
And are you a good cook, or do you like eating more?
Oh, I love
foodie. So
food.
So we definitely, I think, match up on that one. Okay, how do you find meaning in uncertainty, and what advice would you like to give our listeners as well? Uncertainty, unplannedness of life.
So it does throw you off, but I think it also keeps you going, because, what's the fun if there's no challenge in life? And uncertainty is challenging. To be able to sort of think on your feet, to make changes, to be flexible. So while it definitely unnerves you, I think it is a part of life, and one needs to just be able to embrace it, just knowing that it is what it is.
Like you rightly said, Neerja, uncertainty, is a part of our life. A message you would like to give our listeners, our viewers, could be the youth, or because you're working in this space, right? Sometimes things don't go the way we've planned it. And if it doesn't, if it's your life is in that moment, how should one, what would you like to tell them? How should one be coping with it?
So, strangely or coincidentally, I think I am going through a phase in my life where I feel that things that I had planned in my personal life have not worked out at all. And, you sometimes come to a phase where you just got to let it be. So I'm just experiencing that. I'm just letting things be, because there has been so much change and there's been so much uncertainty that sometimes you get tired of planning. So you got to sometimes let it be, unclutter your day, unclutter your life, and then wait for something to creep in.
So that's what you would like to tell them, that let things happen, just wait and things will work out their way.
Because that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Yeah, so practice what you preach, I would put it that way. Well, Neerja, it's really been a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us your time, coming on Unplanned Life and being a part of our show. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Amika. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.